And I think filmmakers are greedy. We're all greedy. In general, when you have such an access, you want to get more and more and more. But the last day, which is the day of the parade, the Secret Service approached me in the morning and said, "You've got to come to our office tomorrow with all of your footage." So for me, it's like, I think my mission is done here. And I left in the same day. I didn't go to the Secret Service the next day.
How on earth did you manage to gain access to start filming this production?
Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting us here. And we have with us here our executive producer, Dan Baker, has been great support for us in the film. Thanks, Ty. And as you know, as you saw, the film has a lot of people in the credits that really made this possible. And they were led by the team of producers Shane Boris, Talal, and Odessa Ray. And I'm very thankful for everything they have done to bring the film where it is today. And regarding the access, the thing is, when the U.S. left Afghanistan, there was a leaving, and I was following this during my work as a journalist. And while I was following it, I started to feel like I need to do something about it. But the day I saw the footage of the people in 2021, when everybody was going to the airport in Kabul trying to flee the country, these images haunted me for a while, for very strong. And then when I saw those who clinched to the wheel of one of the aircrafts and fell, it really did something to me. So I spoke to our producer and curator Talarderki, and I told them I want to do something, and he said, "Can you get an access?" And I said yes. With our other executive producer Muhammad Al Banna, we can really track down the fixer that works with the Taliban and try to get an access. I used my 10 years of experience working as a journalist, filming with a lot of world leaders, and my journalistic credentials to get into Afghanistan. And I arrived at a time when the Taliban were seeking validation through journalism. And at that time, they were saying, we're Taliban 2.0, we're going to let women be free, and a lot of things that they were saying in the beginning. And that's how I basically got the initial access, by getting there that early when they wanted validation from journalism. But the story becomes completely different by the time, because they started to tighten their grip around me. They started to become who they are today. And every single day things were getting harder and harder and harder. And I've become like Sisyphus, and the access is my rock. I need to push it very hard just to fall on my head again and restart.
So every day you have to get up, push that rock, and keep doing it. So do you think that you ever got to a point then when they actually trusted you, or you were always under suspicion?
I think trust is a big word. I don't think they ever trusted me, but they somehow accepted my existence in the room. Let it be the monkey around the room. Let it be someone that is bringing some kind of entertainment. I don't know what was it, but trust is a very big word, and I don't think they ever trusted me, nor I trusted them. And we somehow said that to each other, you know?
Yeah. It does seem to be when they referred to you, it was usually derogatory. It's either the camera person or just, like you said, a monkey in the room for their amusement. Given that they placed so many restrictions on you, which you articulate at the beginning of the film, how did your vision of the film evolve from what you originally intended, given those restrictions, to what it eventually ended up being?
I knew the moment we saw Hollywoodgate that I wanted to make a movie about that, and what I expected, that I'm just gonna make a movie about Hollywoodgate with the restrictions that I had from the beginning, because I have this incredible Greek kind of theater that I can film around it, and the story keeps evolving within that space. So for me, I was really fascinated with the space, and it was my main character from the very first second. I didn't expect that the characters would even continue filming with me. I was just filming with people within the space that could let us stay in the space. And they continued filming with them. Some others I filmed with, they stopped filming by the time. But I expected the story to be just them coming into the American space where two cultures are clashing, and that's going to be the story. But I never expected any of these weapons to be part of the story, and this kept evolving in front of my eye, and I didn't believe this is possible to fix it. And when the parade happened, I felt like I had a problem judging those people because I expected that because they can't calculate 67 times 100, they are not able to do anything.
Mm.
And
And now they
that
have
day,
this military
that
might.
that day made me really question my way of judging other people intelligence, because there's a huge difference between sophistication and simplicity, and we judge the simplicity of the other by our own sophistication, and thus we think that they are not intelligent. But if he's not able to calculate 67 times 100, yet he's able to lead the Air Force to fix this has to come to our thinking.
And Shane, so when did you become first aware of the project, and when did you come on board? And also, I mean, I was going to say you're so busy. So what is it in particular that you're like, oh, I have to be part of this?
I came on board thanks to our other producers, Talal Durkee and Odessa Ray, and it was after Ibrahim was in Afghanistan for approximately 8 months over the course of 5 trips, and it was after the third trip. Um, and I spoke to him a couple times, and then after our second conversation, I was on a flight to meet him and the team in Berlin, where I was able to see some more footage, and my jaw just fell to the floor when I saw some of the initial footage of the Taliban in Hollywoodgate, were exploring the exercise machines and finding guns and then finding aircrafts and helicopters, and and it became clear that Ibrahim's an incredible bravery and spirit to capture this footage had the potential to be a really powerful and important film. And and it seemed if there was even the tiniest contribution I could make to helping that be realized, I wanted to try my best.
So you did numerous trips throughout the year. Was there more like when you came back? Was it sort of like starting all over again in terms of gaining access, or was it easier to pick up where you left off?
Getting access to the people is different than getting access to shooting.
Right.
So starting back to gain access to shooting, yes, I would have to go again through the process of trying to regain the access to the shooting, and there will be additional leaders that have been added in between
Yeah.
that I need to pass by their offices, and there's this cousin of this cousin that passed by, and then he's important now, and you have to go and get the permission from him too. Uh, but it was very important that you don't overstep your stay, and this is why I would sometimes leave and come back when I feel like they are really tired of my existence, or when I feel that I got really tired of being there and I cannot handle what's happening in front of me, and psychologically I've been really affected. I would leave and come back, and every time is different. Every time the way things are being dealt with is different depending on how is the situation. So it was always changing.
Can you describe a little bit of that psychological pressure you were under? Like, what were the kinds of things that would really make it difficult for you?
It's very easy that I could make it about me, but I have taken this decision to go to Afghanistan myself. I've left home. I had my camera. I took an airplane and went to Afghanistan. But the people of Afghanistan did not have this choice to leave whenever they wanted to leave. I have been privileged to go back to Berlin, where I'm staying, have therapy, and go through a lot of therapy, and meet with my friends and have them to support me, and then I'm ready to go back again. People of Afghanistan that does not have that, and they did not choose to have the Taliban rule them for the last 3 years. The way they are ruling them, they did not choose to have the U.S. and the NATO invade their country for 20 years with all of these promises that they were given, and then they were left behind the way they were left behind. And also, they did not choose the Soviet Union to come and invade their country before that, nor the Brits before that. So really, every suffering that I went through in this process is literally nothing compared to the suffering of the Afghans.
Um, there was a moment, and we spoke about it outside, where uh, what the lead protagonist throws a water bottle across the
Maulay
room,
Mansour.
and and you described sort of how that summed up their attitude. Do you remember what you said in terms of?
It's all about the kind of regime that they are building, and they have been given the power. They have taken over the power, and they have the chance to build whichever system or regime they want to build. And the regime they are building is a regime that focuses on fixing the most sophisticated weapons that were doomed or called that it's never going to be fixed by the most sophisticated intelligence of the world, by the Pentagon. They said these weapons will never be fixed, and yet they were able to fix and do such a hard job and fix these weapons, but they are not able to save few medicine that were left in a stock that is easily saved by anyone with basically no knowledge about medicine could have saved these medicine. Nor they would care about making sure that the floor is clear. They would throw things, and the moment he realized that the camera is filming, he said, throw it, and he said, pick it up. He wouldn't even pick it up himself and says, hey, I did this wrong. It was wrong for me to throw. I should not throw. You guys should not throw. No, he's like, pick it up for me.
So he was only doing that, you think, because the camera was there?
I guess so.
How much do you think they were performing to the camera?
It was very important for us to let the viewer know from the very first second that the Taliban were hoping for propaganda out of this. And that's why we decided to make a movie that is about propaganda, to take away that of their power. That the viewer from the very first second is watching with the eye between the gates of what they wanted and what I came to do. May I show what I saw? You know while you're watching that there might be trials of propaganda coming through to you. So I filmed for so long. We had 220 hours of material. A lot of it is them really paying attention to the camera. And the idea of fly on the wall is not that you're always fly on the wall. You're in the room, you're present, you see you, and then you get very few moments when you are capable of blending into the wall where they don't see you and the action happens in front of you. But we didn't want to keep them looking at the camera and all of this completely off the film, because you would forget that they know that they are being filmed. And we wanted the viewer to remember that they know that they are being filmed. That's why we kept all of these shots that they look on the camera.
You mentioned the psychological pressure, but were there times when you were also worried about your own personal safety, or were sort of worried about your own life?
Now or back then?
Well, back then. We'll get to now.
I think when you take such a decision from the beginning, you know that comes with a risk. You're taking the risk and you accept this risk from the very first second, and you don't accept it only till the end of the shooting. You accept it till the last day of your life. But I know I wasn't afraid I'm gonna be killed. I haven't overstepped toes of someone that I have done something, but I know that I'm dealing with people that are suffering from PTSD, and I know that they are very impulsive, and they could be very impulsive even among each other. So at any second, they could decide that this guy is a spy and do something to me. So there was always this continuous fear present. But really, when I would look at the people in the street, and whenever I go into the street and people look at me, and they were looking at me as if I am Taliban, because I'm always around them. When they look at me, they were giving me this look that you are a Taliban. And this look was really hurting me so much, because I wanted to scream, hey, I'm not a Taliban. I'm here actually trying to make something that shows the world who you are, but I couldn't. And every time I feel like it's very fearful or I'm tired, I remind myself, you claimed that you're gonna come here and stay by those people and not do like the Americans, that they came, and then when things got hard for them, they just decided to leave. So if you leave now without completing your film, you're exactly like what you claim to stand against. And that's how it somehow kept going all the way to the end.
Did you have a time frame in mind to when you wanted to stop production, or was the end of filming more sort of imposed on you?
I guess in any of those films, you never have an end line. And I think filmmakers are greedy. We're all greedy. In general, when you have such an access, you want to get more and more and more. Maybe I wanted more and more and more. But the last day, which is the day of the parade, the Secret Service approached me in the morning and said, you've got to come to our office tomorrow with all of your footage. And for me, this was the clock that I'm following Taliban transforming from a militia into a military regime. Military regimes, they send Secret Service after journalists or filmmakers, and they do such parades. So for me, it's like, I think my mission is done here. And I left in the same day. I didn't go to the Secret Service the next day.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it was kind of like Taliban 2.0, and they had a different image of themselves at the beginning of the film than what they become by the end of it. Was that something you felt over the course of all your filming, or was that more apparent when you were editing the film together? Just this steady growth into, or the steady transformation?
So
into
what they were saying, they were be Taliban 2.0 in the fact of being more open and being more understanding of the world, and they really a lot of media fell for them in the beginning. Like there were a lot of positive reviews that came. Reviews. I'm talking about films. A lot of positive reports that
Yeah.
came about them, and these reports were hurting me a lot because I could see that this is not what's happening. But they are Taliban 2.0. They are Taliban 2.0 because they understand what propaganda is, and they have this tool that they are using. So Taliban one, the first time they were doing things that this time they are doing it much smarter, which is pretty much the same way they are suppressing the woman the same way, even maybe worse. This time women cannot go to the park. It doesn't exist in any other country. I don't know if in history women were not allowed to go to the park. Now they banned the images of animals on TV. They banned woman's voice. Today an Afghan woman, if you ask them, they don't dream of education. They dream that they can just go out in the street and walk. Education has become a very far-fetched dream. So they are Taliban 2.0 with the fact of the understanding of propaganda, and with all of these weapons, it's very hard for anyone to stand against them from within the country.
Shane, with you and the producing team, what were the biggest challenges you had in terms of getting this film to completion?
And I think in terms of the finding the story is always one of the hardest things. And we knew that we had a story of the base. We knew we were into the story of the Taliban finding the weapons, fixing the weapons, and threatening to use the weapons. But it also became so clear that we had to tell this dual story of propaganda. And there was no better place for that than Hollywoodgate. And we saw figuring out how to tell the story of the Taliban, not only inheriting the over $7 billion of weapons that were left behind, but also inheriting the Hollywood-style tools of storytelling that are often weaponized for the acquisition and expression of power. Recognizing that they were going to use our story as another weapon to show their power, we had to sort of accept that was one layer of the story, and also show the other side of that, which is even though they're using this story as propaganda, and even though there is fear, that there's a justification for the fear of what they're going to do, what they do to the people of Afghanistan, and what they might do to other countries. You also have to recognize the tools that they're using, and the added tool that the U.S. gave them. And then on top of that, that weaponized tool of storytelling didn't come out of nowhere. That didn't enter the world in a void. That was crafted over, decades, centuries, and operationalized by the U.S. military to tell the story of why the U.S. and NATO forces went to Afghanistan, what they were doing in the beginning, what they continue to do over the course of this 20-year war that was invested in by both administrations. And so I think for us now, one of the hardest things and the biggest challenges is how can we share this story, recognizing that it is a consequence of the U.S., both parties in the U.S. and NATO, and that it is not only in the strategic interest of those entities to continue to pay attention to Afghanistan and the suffering of the people and the capabilities of the Taliban, but also an obligation, an ethical obligation to not look away, to continue to pay attention to what is happening there and to try and figure out a solution. And we certainly don't have that solution, but we hope, and this is the biggest challenge actually, hoping that this film in some way can help bring attention back so that smarter people than us can find a solution.
Definitely, hopefully that solution is not conducting another war, because conducting wars and fighting ideology with weapons, Afghanistan is a great proof that this has failed. and it will keep failing because the more you fight, the more you victimize the one in front of you, the more they gain support, the stronger they become. Taliban, when the war started, were not as many as they are today, were not as strong as they are today, and rather than the war making them weaker and weaken their ideologies, has made a lot of people that does not understand anything about ideology blindly following them because just simply they were victims of an outer force that was fighting them, and this is the propaganda that Taliban relied on for many years.
Yes. And then just one last point on the US side too, and speaking of propaganda, we talk about the casualties in US soldiers, US lives in Afghanistan as approximately 3,000 people. But when you add the amount of veterans who came back and committed suicide, it's over 30,000 people. And so, and we heard someone tell us the other day, what was 22
per day.
22 per day, 22 people per day, veterans taking their lives. And this is an added layer of the stories that aren't told and the consequences of war.
Now that the film's complete and being screened for the public, are there any repercussions that you can see happening in terms of, like, do you think there's going to be any issue from the Taliban itself, or?
You saw in the film when the medicine were got expired, the only thing they said, the head doctor is lazy, and I waited for 3 days hoping that I would find another scene of them talking about the medicine, because I have got only 2 scenes and it has to be at least 3 scenes that makes the story part of the film. And I couldn't find this other scene. I was really waiting for them to bring the doctor and talk to him, why would you ain't this go bad, and they did nothing. And for me is I think it's gonna be the same way when these totalitarian regimes make mistake. They act like they have done nothing, and unfortunately, this is what's happening also from the West regarding Afghanistan, that they act like they have done nothing.
And I think that scene in particular is so striking for all of us, just cinematically, but also ethically. It raises such interesting questions of the problems we choose to pay attention to, and this and that will determine what our capabilities go towards solving. And it's the same whether you're the idea that so much attention of a regime goes towards its sort of offensive capabilities or protecting people from an external threat, when you have literally in your hands medicine that can heal your people. And I think of that, no country is immune from that. And it makes me, it's also a really important lens into how we act as individuals too, and the problems we choose to pay attention to.
And if really Maulay Mansour has let his wife continue her work, being a doctor, she would have saved these medicines.
Yeah.
And this was the 13 that we found in there.
and yeah. I think we still have a few minutes left. Does anyone in the audience have any questions at all? Yes.
So Paul, thank you so much for doing this. I'm from Afghanistan, and I love the kind of what you just shared kind of complete a lot of questions I had throughout the movie. I think in case of Afghanistan, a lot of what's been said and told the stories through Hollywood, usually we see a little bit of glimpses of what people go through, and the most outstanding takeaway is that a white dude saves the day. He's the hero, or she's the hero. But I'm glad you kind of came a step closer to actually show the actual reality of what's imposed on the people. I mean, the fact that she couldn't get to, even more put out to the world, the suffering of the people, the voice of the women. It kind of also tells us how suppressed people are feeling right now. I came myself to evacuations in 2021, by the way, and I'm so glad I see that, because it's kind of one small step towards that reality in the ground, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. It was very important also for us to make sure regarding safety and security of the people that we took the decision not to film with any civilian, because if you put any civilian in this movie with the Taliban, that they will probably end up seeing this movie. You're risking the life of that, or regardless if it's a man or a woman, you're risking their life and the lives of their family, and we did not want to bear responsibility of that. And it was a very conscious decision that we will try to show the suffering of the Afghans without having to put anybody's life at risk.
Again, congratulations. And yeah, I just want to I just wanted to echo. I really appreciated that you didn't actually for precisely that reason. You know, just being a documentarian myself, I think without getting into specifics, there's been a lot of like, frankly, Western poverty porn that's very flippant and unethical when it comes to those kind of things. So I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
But speaking of Mullah Mansour and
Mukhtar.
Can you tell me about choosing their stories, or were they the ones that the Taliban offered to you to follow, or how did that come about?
So when I got into the base, I wanted to film whichever possible to stay within the base. And the first one that says yes to me was Mukhtar. I met him. He was young and ambitious, and you can see he loves himself, and he's got a lot of ambition. And I could see that. I know that this guy, within a very short of time, he's gonna do something. So I found his story very interesting, and I said, "Would you like if I film with you?" He said yes, and I said, "Okay." And then he said, "Yeah, but you need to have the permission of my emir, or my leader." Like, okay, I went to the emir, and then the emir led to another emir, and the emir led to another emir, and then this other, and the other, and the other, and the other, and you know how it works in that system. And the top of the ladder with Mawlay Mansour. And when I went to him, I was the first ever journalist that he ever met. So he was like welcoming me, coming in, and I asked him if it's okay to film with Mukhtar. And he said, yeah, of course. And the very fast yes that he gave me made me ask him, would you mind if I film with you too? And he said, no, I don't mind. You can film with me too. And this was the very early stages when they were really, really happy to have someone pointing their camera towards them. And what they saw in me, I thought that maybe because I'm Muslim, it's something interesting to them. But I quickly realized they don't really care at all about my background. It's for them, actually, I'm not really a true Muslim. I'm like a fake one. But what was fascinating to them about my story is that I filmed with a lot of world leaders. So I would show them pictures of me with presidents. Specifically, they picked the picture of me with Mahathir Mohamad. Like, oh, you filmed with Mahathir Mohamad? Okay, you can film with us too. And that's how it all started.
And I think just to add one other thing too is that there were many characters that Ibrahim filmed, and we were deciding between them. But there was an interesting relationship between someone who had a lot of power and someone who was trying to get more power. So sort of the leader and the ground soldier, and it also was an interesting sort of parallel to this regime that we thought initially was primarily ideologically motivated, but over the course of the film discovered very clearly that it was about how to have power over the most people possible. And specifically in a country, and you see this like when 50% of the population can have complete control over another 50% of the population. And this goes to up to the point where it even invisibilizes every woman and girl in that country, where you can't even speak to them. So I think the choice that thanks to Ibrahim primarily of identifying those two characters, we were able to open up the world in a way that we otherwise wouldn't be in.
Just as a follow, and that's a very good point you bring up. I mean, one of the scenes that I thought was very compelling was when the aircraft was ready, and there was a lot of infighting going on, and they were like throwing people off. And there was clearly, different power dynamics at play, and they were saying, how can you, strike another Talib? We're all Talib, we're all Taliban. I guess whatever ideology they had, that they're all equal, whatever, that all just went. So I also kind of got the feeling that they were very conscious of you and trying to use you as well.
Of course.
Especially Mullah Mansour. Do you think that kind of evolved over the 8 months that you were?
It actually, the opposite. he wanted to use me in the beginning, and by the time he got tired of me. And for him, I'm like, you're back again. It was more towards that by the time, and also he's got in the beginning he was. This is what we tried to portray. I tried to put any feelings on the side and just see what I lived, and what I lived is that someone that believed in himself in the beginning. He believed he's the difference. He thought that he's the one that is gonna bring justice and bring the beauty to the country, and he's gonna be the new leader that goes after the very corrupt last government that was before him. This was his own belief, and I saw him evolving through the process of just becoming what he claimed to be the opposite of, and understanding that he's just another regime. And this is was the process. And for me, that scene with the fighting was kind of the moment when he's like, okay, no, I have to use the power like they used it. And there was a moment of silence after this when he sits in the airplane, and I could see in his eyes of, did I just become what I don't want to become? And there's a moment of questioning in his head, and I could see it throughout the whole time when we were flying towards the parade. And at the end of the parade, when they came and kissed his hand, it just confirmed to him, no, if you slap, you're gonna have your hand kissed, so just slap more. This is the kind of the evolution that was happening of his character in front of me. So by the time he would actually look at me lower and lower and lower. At the beginning, he had some kind of belief, you film with other leaders, I could be also a leader, and by the time I am a leader, I don't care about you.
Yeah, back.
Has the U.S. government contacted you?
Yes, we've had an opportunity to show the film, all over the country and throughout Europe too, and including officials from the U.S. and Europe. And I think we can't comment too much on like that response. Not that there's that much.
There was no
response,
response.
but I think one of the things that is seen is I think for most people, it's sort of there's a black box of who the Taliban are since they've come to power, and the film sort of pulls back the curtain and shows that, and I think that's revelatory for a lot of government officials who don't have access anymore to what's happening in Afghanistan, and that's the same for Europe. But I think also there's a sense of despondency of like seeing the outcome of 20 years of war, that a lot of people, I think, in the U.S. government and U.S. military, to Ibrahim's point, like they thought they were doing something that was helpful, and to see the consequence of that, that failure and that sort of lack of understanding, lack of communication that happened between the U.S. and the Afghan people, I think is really hard for many in the U.S. government to.
Do you think it's easier for them to turn a blind eye to it? I mean, this film is sort of really challenging in that regard to make people think about that. Do you think there's any hope, just your opinion, that there will be some introspection or thought on these issues?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think that's we're seeing the proof of that when people see the film, and we showed it in Brussels with the European Commission just a few weeks ago. And what was the comment that they?
This film is the missing provided us with the missing piece of puzzle of understanding the Taliban.
So I think like that statement really was powerful for us to hear, that you never know what's going to happen, but maybe the film does have a chance.
Our job as filmmakers is not to change the world.
Yeah.
This is not the job of filmmakers. Our job is just to transform realities into a cinematic way, and cinema was just a tool that we've used to bring closer what's happening in Afghanistan to the people and to the decision makers as much as we can. We're working with the film, we're showing it to politicians, we're showing it to policy makers, we're showing it to public audience, going with it to press, just to bring back the talks regarding Afghanistan. But it's not our job that they pick on it and they decide to do something. Our job is just to make sure that the message has been delivered, and the message we delivered very clear that Afghanistan, dealing with Afghanistan by the US and the NATO is not a charity. It's an obligation towards the 20 years of war that you've conducted there. And if you really have these very high standards that you claim to have, which is the democracy and bringing education and understanding and saving women, you have to figure out a solution and be active rather than just being reactive, and do exactly the same like you did last time when the Taliban were in power, by applying sanctions for 5 years until the problem came to your door. And the only solution you had then was to conduct a war. So hopefully we'll find another solution this time other than war.
Yeah, and the last thing I would just add is, the hope of cinema, at least as we understand it too, is not necessarily to create, to sympathize with the subjects of a film, but there is an intention to humanize, to recognize that these are human beings who are expressing like unfathomably brutal power over another set of human beings. And as such, we have to change the way we engage with that situation, with that context in Afghanistan, anywhere else. And I think one of the things the film hopefully shows is that war is, in general, not an effective, a 20-year war without clear objectives, with objectives that change dramatically and frankly to become nearly impossible, won't affect the kind of change that anyone hopes for.
Okay, well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thanks a lot for having me.
And thank you all for coming tonight.